What is a function? Many people hear this math word and instantly experience a sort of visceral rejection, as though this is a concept that is too hard to understand. However, I think that every person has an intuitive understanding of what a function is, even if they don't use that word to describe it. My goal in this video is to show you some examples of everyday experiences that you already understand and help you associate them with functions or non-functions. Let's get started. Have you ever played with a magic 8 ball? This is a novelty toy from the 1950s that claims to answer questions to life's dilemmas. Essentially, it is a sphere filled with a dark blue dye, and it has a 20-sided die inside it that has 20 different answers on it. You're supposed to ask it a question, shake the ball, and the answer will be revealed in the small window in the ball. I don't actually have one, so I found an online simulator for us to play with. So on this website, there's an image that looks like the top of the ball, and the answer appears in the center. Below, there's a space for you to type a question, and then you click the ball for it to answer. Let's try it. I'll ask it, "How old am I?" It responds, "Signs point to yes," which is confusing nonsense. It leads us to think that our input, or what we put in to the ball, isn't an acceptable question. We'll talk more about this later, but the set of acceptable inputs is called domain. The domain of the magic 8 ball is questions whose answers are yes or no. This is the only way that the answers will make sense with the questions. So let's change the question. Instead, I'll ask, "Am I 44 years old?" Shake it, and it says, "You may rely on it." It's a miracle. How did it know? I'm skeptical, so let me ask it again. "Am I 44 years old?" This time it says, "My reply is no." What happened? Did it change its mind? Does it think that my birthday came and went since I last asked and now I'm 45? Or I'm sure you find it obvious that the answers aren't based on my questions at all. The answers given are generated randomly. This game wouldn't be any fun if you already knew the answer to your questions. People would treat it like some kind of oracle or mystical fortune teller that could predict the future. So let's try it. Here's another question. Will I pass my test? It says, "Without a doubt." Whew, I guess I don't have to bother studying then. Do you think it is a good idea to make life decisions using a tool like this? I hope you answered no. There's an obvious lack of predictability or reliability. And we like predictability and reliability because that is how we make good decisions whenever possible. What would predictability look like if the magic 8 ball really worked? Well, each question you ask it, as long as it is an acceptable question, would always produce the same answer. So the magic 8 ball is an example of something that isn't a function. Can you see why this isn't a function? It doesn't have to be entirely unreliable. If even once the results are contradictory, it's enough for us to say that the method isn't reliable because it isn't reliable all the time. This understanding can help us define what a function is. So, what is a function? We've already defined that the set of all possible inputs is called domain. Now, the set of all possible outputs is called the range. So, a function is a relationship that connects each element of the domain to at most one element in the range. If the relationship is not a function, then we simply call it a relation, or a connection between input and output. This isn't a bad thing, and it happens in life all the time. But bad things happen when we assume that something is functioning when it isn't. Here are some examples. If there are two people named Sam in a classroom, and one is 15 years old and the other is 16 years old, it just shows that name cannot be used to predict age. No one would be surprised by that. The relationship between name and age is a relation, but not a function. Here's another example. Suppose you tried to use a vending machine. You typed a code like A17, and the machine gives you a Coke. The next day, you type A17 again, and again it gives you a Coke. The next day, when you type A17, a Sprite comes out. When you assumed that the same code would produce the same drink every time, you assumed the vending machine was functioning, as you should. But this time it wasn't, and therefore the machine could not be trusted. And you'd probably hesitate to use it again, because you wouldn't know what to expect. One more example, and this is something that actually happened to me. Many years ago, I used to live in a building that had 17 floors. I lived on the 12th floor, and every day when I'd get home from work, I'd get in the elevator, press the button labeled 12, and it would take me to my floor. But one day I pressed 12, and the elevator skipped my floor and continued on to floor 17. Even though there are bigger problems in life, I'm sure you can imagine how frustrating this was. My math teacher brain started to think, well, maybe one of the other buttons is now linked to 12, so I just have to figure out which one to press to get home. Sadly, that didn't work. The 12 button sometimes stopped at my floor and sometimes continued to 17. They really should have put a sign on the elevator that said, not functioning. Even though these are not mathematical examples, I wanted to show you that you already have experienced functions in our world and have an intrinsic intuition that predictability has its purpose. I urge you to keep an eye out as you live your life and try to identify things that are or are not functions. In the next video, we'll talk about function notation and how we can define mathematical tasks using functions. See you soon. I hope you enjoyed this video. See you next time.